Hello and welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle on Jump to It. As usual, I'm joined by regular guests Johnny Ward and Emma Nagle, and we're going to discuss everything that happened in the last week in Ireland and abroad. Lots of things abroad, particularly. Johnny, Emma, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vinny.
Thanks, Vincent.
So the big one, the big talking point from the last week has to be Hewick. Fantastic performance with Shark Hanlon sending the horse over there. It really caught a wave on the internet and everywhere else, and media worldwide seems to have grabbed a hold of Shark. He's a larger than life character and a terrific performance. Emma, did you watch it live on Saturday evening?
Yeah, I watched a few of the races, and the coverage was brilliant. I thought it was kind of really, it was like a bit like a point to point, really, wasn't it? Watching them going around the field, and there was no rails or anything, but no, it was brilliant, and it was mad. Like in a week with Baaeed and a whole lot. I think Hewick got probably one of the biggest reactions of all. I think seeing the celebrations, and it's just a story everyone gets behind, and I think everyone was delighted to see him win. But no, it was brilliant. I think the race just really suited him, didn't it? Like the kind of smaller fences, and he can take a bit of a chance, and he kind of realised early on that he could take the chance and he'd get away with it. So he just flew around there, and it was brilliant to watch. In fairness, it's great seeing the Shark getting interviewed afterwards, and he paid respects to Jack de Bromhead, and it was just brilliant to see those celebrations. And oh no, it was class. In fairness.
Yeah, and Johnny, what do you think? 800 quid. He's after winning 450,000 now, and next stop is the Gold Cup. Any chance in it, do you think?
I think he has, and I think he's proven you wrong as well, Vinny. You said if he were your horse, you wouldn't be going over to Far Hills. Well, then you wouldn't have been the 111,101.11 is given as the figure here. That must be a very direct comparison to Sterling at the moment, whatever that is. You were saying before the show that he was odds on. Apparently he returned 21-10. If I'd known that, I'd probably have backed him, because my understanding was this was a race that was effectively like a grade 2 or 3 over here, 3 maybe, and it was up for grabs. And I thought that, I have to say, I thought it was a good idea to go over, because I don't think it'll impinge on his ability to win the Gold Cup and running in America in October. How Shark obviously has never had a Gold Cup contender. I agree with you. I think he's a chance. How he campaigns him henceforth, I don't know, and the talk that he goes straight there is quite interesting. But as you say, I was in Mallow yesterday. There was a little bit of chat about Baaeed, but there was a lot of chat about Hewick. I spoke to Willie Mullins, and it was one of the first things he involuntarily said. I think Shark, shows that people I think they're more interested nearly in the human stories involved, the fact that this horse costs next to nothing, than they are in really good horses, and really good horses getting beaten like Baaeed. He gave a lovely tribute about Jack de Bromhead, and the mad thing about this horse is, if you look up his profile, he was beaten in his first 14 races, some of them at point to points, and he started off in his point to points, failing to complete behind horses called Fernie Hollow and Sporting John, and look at him now.
Oh, it's incredible what he's done, isn't it? I think he definitely has a chance in a Gold Cup. As I was saying to you before we came on air, he's currently 33-1 for the Gold Cup. If someone wanted to have a bet on that, the plan is he doesn't run again till the spring. They're putting him away now. He's had a long year. So he's probably going to be wrapped up in cotton wool between now and then, and there's a strong chance he will line up in the Gold Cup. Whereas all of the horses ahead of him in the betting, they're going to have to race between now and then. Anything can happen to them. We know it can be very hit and miss with these anti-post bets. Do you get a run at all? Most of the time you don't even get a run with these horses if you back them this far in advance, whereas there has to be a strong chance he turns up. So on that alone, I think he's probably worth a little interest at 33-1. But do remember, it's safer gambling week this week, so watch out for what you're doing. Keep an eye on everything to do with it. There's 3 main objectives to this safer gambling week. First of one is how to gamble safely. And I think that's a piece of advice for most people. You really do need to. You learn that with time. I think there isn't anyone who backs horses who hasn't lost a head at some stage for whatever reason. And it can be lots of reasons. Things going on in your life might be one of them. But drinking alcohol is one. That's a big no. Absolute no. I don't know about the drug side of things, but I wouldn't say that's a good thing either. But definitely don't drink and gamble together. That's an absolute no for anyone. And look, there's lots of advice and tools out there to help you if you do have issues with it. But anyway, we'll move on from that. It is safer gambling week. The other thing then we briefly hit on there, Johnny, is Baaeed. Were you disappointed?
I was actually disappointed from the perspective that I don't get bogged down really in relative strengths of horses ratings. Pat Healy, the photographer, was having a pop at me for saying that Baaeed was something like See the Stars yesterday. I think Pat is a massive See the Stars fan, and we are then kind of started going on about comparing Frankel and See the Stars, and I was lucky enough to see both of them run. I didn't see Baaeed run, but I do like the notion of a horse going to stud unbeaten, not after like a fake easy campaign. And fair enough, Baaeed didn't step up to 1.5 miles, but I think there's always that, like, you can have this debate forevermore. Then he was unbeaten, like, so nothing ever beat him. I mean, he was pretty much flawless for his time, and this was kind of, the arc wouldn't have worked out for him. I think looking at yesterday, the arc on the ground would definitely have not worked out, and you would have totally exonerated him because it was something of a slog. And even Luxembourg, who didn't run badly, he never had any chance in the arc. But the fact that he was beaten in a sort of a, he's a swan song over 1.2 miles, really against horses that he was better than, I think was disappointing. And I would blame the ground, but it I guess it goes to show that this thing that all good horses handle all types of ground. I think that's kind of a nonsense as well. I mean, don't tell me what a good horse is. A good horse is a horse that can show unbelievable ability. I just thought it was a little bit disappointing for the story, because I love this horse. I think he is something of the nearest thing we've had to a Frankel or a See the Stars since they've been around, and it was just a little bit disappointing. But I still wouldn't mind owning them and having some of them at stud.
I'd agree with that. I don't know what the true reason was why he didn't run up to scratch. There's lots of possibilities. The trip could again be one, particularly the trip in the ground, presumably. But it was interesting, the only horse he'd run against before in the race was Dubai Honor, which he'd beaten 9 lengths before. And on Saturday, he was only 2 3/4 lengths in front of that horse. So he certainly looks like he ran 6 lengths or whatever below what he had done previously. If he'd have run 6 lengths better, he'd have won easy, and we'd be talking about a superstar and having to compare him to the other two. What about the rest of Champions Day, Emma? Lots of Irish horses ran, but we'd no winner. We'd 13 runners, no winner. A few good performances. Anything in particular there for you? Kinross, Emily Upjohn, Frankie had a double.
Yeah, I thought Kinross was very, very impressive, and Emily Upjohn as well. We saw, I think people were kind of teasing Frankie about retiring before, so he kind of put a boot to that straight away. But no, just on Baaeed again, I was very disappointed in it as well. I think no one wanted to see him getting beat. Really, not even the most cynical of people watching. It's kind of the story that everyone likes to, the unbeaten horse, the kind of, everyone wanted him to be the next Frankel, the best See the Stars, but it's kind of just goes to show how good those horses actually were. I think people can be a bit quick to watch, to compare like every good horse coming up along to the ones I've gone in the past, but I don't think we might not ever see a horse like Frankel or See the Stars for a long, long time again. But yeah, no, Kinross was very impressive for me, and Emily Upjohn, it was nice to see her bounce back and get her Group 1 win after, she'd been a bit disappointing. I suppose there was the kind of story of her in the Oaks, and then she wasn't great next time out. So yeah, it was nice to see her get the Group 1 win. And as well, I think Trushan was very, very good. I think Holly Doyle gave him a great ride. Coltrane ran a massive race, but it was a great day of racing. Kind of a good way to round off the flat season.
Yeah, I agree. Well, one of the things about it was their crowd was slightly down. 23,782 turned up. Just looking at the other big meetings at the weekend, we obviously had the American Grand National, where there was a very big crowd there. And then we had a huge crowd in Australia, in Sydney, for the Everest, the 6th running of that 15 million Australian dollar turf race, the richest turf race in the world. 46,221, a record crowd turned up for that, which is double what turned up at Ascot. Is there an issue with crowds in the UK, Johnny?
Well, there clearly is, because the figures, I take this from the Racing Post story on Ascot, but the average attendance is down from the first, to August. First 8 months of the year is 3,666. Now, that's not terrible, really, when you also can look at Irish crowds. I mean, how many people are paying into Irish meetings? But anyway, that's down 17.4% on 2019. Like, that's a hell of a lot. And you would have thought there would have been a post-pandemic bounce. And I suppose the two sports in my life, day to day, are my two main sports are racing and League of Ireland. And League of Ireland crowds pre-pandemic are way up. So I'm not sure what the answer is, or what the problem is. I think there's definitely a cost of living crisis to some extent, and it's difficult. But racing going forward today, Cheltenham thankfully didn't go with a mad decision of 5 days or sticking to 4. I think festivals, Vinny, in general are all right, but like that was a very good card at Ascot. It was Baaeed Swan Song, and it wasn't unexpected. I think they were talked about 25,000, so it was close to that. But this is definitely a trend, and racing in Britain in general has massive issues, and crowds are probably down the list, but it's still a little bit worrying. That figure of 17.4% is very, very worrying considering how long we were without racing. And you would have thought people, like, I suppose the last thing I would say in it, and like I was at Mallow yesterday, there were 35-minute gaps in an 8-race card. I left the house at 8 o'clock. Now, in fairness, I was working. I left earlier than I needed to leave. I got back at 10 o'clock, so I was gone 14 hours. The 35-minute gaps in an 8-race card when people have very little of an attention span. Like, unless you're at the bar, I don't want to sound like an alco here, but unless you're at the bar, that's a long day to be spending primarily just talking shy to people. And it's people have to figure out, how do we get people back racing? Because most of the time you're spending not actually watching the sport, and there is a trend here.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing, I don't know whether this is relevant or not, but I just looked at the price point for the 3 big meetings over the weekend. You had the one where Hewick ran in America, that was 20, if this is turned into euro, just a standard admission price was €20.50. If you went to the Australian Everest in Randwick, that was €26.92, and Ascot €42.81 to go to Ascot. So it's more than double the price of the American one and about 1.5 times the price of the Australian one. You just wonder, have we gone too high in these, or is that just the standard thing for sporting events generally around these parts of the world?
I don't. And then when you get there, you're spending your £42. Like, from my experience of England recently, or certainly the price of a pint when I was in London, everything is extremely expensive, and the British economy is facing a lot of turmoil. And I think people are coming into a winter now where they have concerns about their energy costs, and that is a lot. We've major challenges ahead to get people racing. I really do feel that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we do. Anyway, we'll look at last week's racing. We'll quickly go through this. We had a very busy week. We started off the week in Killarney on Monday, a flat meeting. Joseph O'Brien, Declan McDonough won the first 2 maidens. Then we went Tuesday in Punchestown. Darver Star and Gavin Cromwell and Keith Donoghue won again. That's 3 wins in a row for the 9-year-old. Heads to the Hatton's Grace next, which may bump into Honeysuckle again. I think it has one good run against Honeysuckle in the past, was only beaten 3/4 of a length. So that'll be interesting to see. Punchestown Wednesday, this was probably one of the highlights of the National Hunt season so far. We had a very good horse ran. Marine Nationale, Barry Connell, Michael O'Sullivan again. We talked about them last week, that the horse was due to run. It hacked up, to be honest with you. Never off the bridle to win 4 lengths. Emma, is that a horse to follow, do you think, from the week?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose he had to do what he did just to justify the confidence that was around him coming into the race. He's been talked about as a good horse for a while now. So, yeah, I mean, he did it easily, and he kind of had to do that to kind of go on and be the top novice hurdler as they're kind of touting him to be. But it was interesting. He looks like quite a light framed horse, and it was interesting afterwards because Barry Connell said that he was taking a good blow and that he might actually need another one before the Royal Bond. So it'll be interesting to see how much he'll improve, because he was quite light looking, and he's got a light old frame. So, but no, I was happy with his attitude. Seemed great. He looked to be attacking his jumps, and he showed a good appetite for it. So no, he couldn't have done it much better, and that's, I suppose, all you could expect of him first day over.
When I get into racing, well before Emma will remember this, but the horse that was. It was kind of the flashy horse of that time, Vinny, and I didn't really know racing, and I got into it during college, was Rhinestone Cowboy. And there was something about his name and the colours and just the way he raced, and this style of not coming off the bridle. And I was mesmerised by this. And there's a little bit of that in this lad, in that he's kind of, he hasn't come off the bridle essentially in his 3 starts. He's running in fairly notable colours, but Barry Connell is only starting as a trainer, and as much as in September and October you don't want to be thinking about Cheltenham or talking about it, I kind of love the idea of having a few quid on him at like 16 to 1, I think, for the Supreme Novice, like a 5 each way even, and watching that kind of prosper as the year goes on. He's by a stallion that's I have to say I don't know much about French Navy, and there's a lot of mystique about him. He's ex-Sam Curling, who's a very good kind of teacher of young horses, and I think it's a great narrative early in the season to have someone different, a bit like Hewick.
Yeah, I agree. He looks a very, very good horse. It's interesting. Initially, anyway, they're going to be sticking to 2 miles. Not sure if they'll. I presume he'll stay a lot further. Is the first thing he looks like he will. But that's interesting in itself. The other thing, Wednesday, Punchestown, we saw Adamantly Chosen won a Grade 3 novice chase, and we also had Galvin. I thought that was a fair performance. Galvin, first time up, gave £12 and more to the rest of them horses, including the likes of Run Wild Fred, which was second, beat them all easily, and goes to Down Royal for the big chase next. Galvin, he was an anti-post favourite for a period for the Gold Cup last year. What do you think, Johnny? Is he a contender this time round?
I think I might have backed him in the Gold Cup last year. I couldn't back him after that. I mean, he's an 8-year-old going 9, but he was beaten so far, and I thought he was nowhere near classy enough on the day to beat A Plus Tard. And he's probably a horse that likes good ground, so I couldn't see him win the Gold Cup. And I think, in fairness, Gordon has said that his Cup final is Down Royal, and that's an interesting day's race now. It'll be intriguing to see what sort of crowd they have, because I think it'll hold up, and Galvin will bring a bit of kind of the X factor to it. But it was a very good form. So if you look at it visually on the figures, I even thought Politesse would run well. She was getting an awful lot of weight, and he hammered her, and he beat Run Wild Fred at 154, giving him £12 easily. So obviously it was a very good form. So I couldn't see him win a Gold Cup though.
And what about a Grand National? Is he a Grand National horse?
Yeah. I don't know what their plan is, but that would absolutely. I mean, and you know, the handicap weight and the weight he has wouldn't necessarily be a barrier to that. Not entirely dissimilar profile, even if you can say there is a similar profile to Tiger Roll in the sense that he's changing his discipline, and I could easily see that happen for sure.
Yeah. Okay, interesting stuff. Then we went on to Thursday. We had the Curragh, we had a treble for Aidan. He had a 2-year-old called Hispanic, won 8 lengths over 5 furlongs, which is quite memorable, though it was quite testing ground. Tremor was also on that day. We had a double for Sean Flanagan, who went on to ride a winner in the States at the weekend. Darrow O'Keefe also had a winner. Willie had his usual 14-length winner of the bumper and is looking for a listed bumper for Tina Meehan next, and he seems to be doing that every day of the week. We nearly seem to hear him. He's a winner of a bumper looking for going listed next. Then Friday, Dundalk, with a treble for Colin Keane. That was interesting. I thought, in the sense that we started the week 80 winners apiece for him and Billy Lee. He's now kicked 5 clear by the end of the week. Will he win the championship again, Emma?
I presume Colin will probably go on and win it now. It's been a great battle, and I think they're actually good friends outside of the racetrack as well, which is great. There was
it'd be very hard not to like either of them now if you're the other. You know, they're just two top lads.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great to have the competition as well, because you'd often see it there in years gone by, and some lad is running away with a massive lead. But no, it's great to have the competition, and I'm sure they're enjoying it themselves as well. A bit of crack between them, I'm sure.
Yeah, and long may they enjoy it, because there's some real good guys coming up behind them. That's the other side of it, from Dylan Brown, McMonigal, and the rest. And we had a guy who rode a double on Saturday, Jamie Powell, 23 for the season. Johnny, you've interviewed him before. He's a guy going places, isn't he?
Yeah, I think this lad is really good, and I mean, year after year, you kind of talk up like young soccer players or young Gaelic players or young jockeys, and the bottom line is you have to temper that enthusiasm, because but generally it doesn't quite go the level that you think it is. But take all that aside, and we spoke about Michael O'Sullivan, whose claim is down, I think, to £2. Is down £2 the last few weeks. And you look, that's one thing. But you look at young claimers who are so good on the flat, and I think when Zoffman won at Leopardstown, we might mention him in the Premier Handicap at the end of the card Saturday. Noel Meade, who's often good for a quote, he said it's a free £7 with Jamie at the moment. That might be an exaggeration, and it probably is, but I can see where he's coming from, and he just looks. I think with young jockeys like this, and I might be wrong, when you see them in a finish and they just don't look young, they just look like totally as if they're at this for a long time. And his backstory is really, really not what you'd expect, in that his dad, Anthony, was killed when Jamie was like a baby or really, really young. And like he had to overcome that, and has so much respect for his mother, the way that she brought him up. But he actually kind of like, it was almost written in the stars he'd become a jockey. But he actually like kind of fell out of love with it when he was, I think, sort of give or take 12, 13 years of age. And then I think perhaps his cousin or somebody kind of got him back into riding. look at him now. He's absolutely thriving. And I think, every time now I'm doing a spot like the Racing Post and he's riding a horse, my respect for the horse goes up massively. And he's just he still has that £7, just nearly back everything he's riding.
Yeah, I used to know his dad well. He was a lovely guy and tragically lost way too soon. Really was a great character, Anthony Powell, and a very, very good rider. So hopefully his son reaches the top two. Moving on then, after Saturday, we had Sunday in Nice, where Aidan O'Brien, another double. He did a double on Saturday, he did a double on Sunday, he did a treble on whatever day it was earlier in the week, Thursday. So he's had a good week as usual. And we also had Jessica Harrington and Shane Foley had a double in Nice on Sunday. And Zakeni, is that how you pronounce it? Or Yazeni. Colin Keane made all. Yeah, that's after doing that twice. Did the same in Galway, wasn't it, the last day? That horse, and very good front runner. Great end of season for Ger Lyons too. He's finishing the season strong. He tends to do that, but he had a quiet time for the first half of it. And then on Cork on Sunday, Johnny, you were there. And Gavin Cromwell, Keith Donoghue had a double. They're having a good partnership lately as well. They Darver Star earlier in the week. How did you get on down in Cork? Bad weather, I presume. Looking at the TV pictures, I thought it was almost unraceable at the finish.
Oh, it was terrible. It was just very briefly to mention Yaxeni, like everything Ger has turns to gold. 8,000 quid yearling, essentially by a jump stallion, and she's that good. And Colin, as you say, going to the title. But Mallow was interesting. It's a track that I go way back to because I was involved in Operation Houdini when Emma's dad trained a horse called a Lickadoo, and we were involved in a driving finish in the Cork National. I've a love-hate relationship with the course ever since he was thrown out, even though he was probably rightly thrown out. But so I was down there to work, and by the end of the card, I had to do a little kind of on-screen thing, like wrap up what happened throughout the day. So the handiest thing is almost to have your phone and just scroll through the results very quickly. And as I was doing this, I was like a race or two in, and there was so much water on my phone, it just stopped working. And this was live. I was like, right. And my brain is getting to the point where I couldn't off the top of my head remember what had won each individual race. So I was basically waffling. So what I do remember now is that...
no, in fairness, Johnny, you're very good at that. Yeah.
There's a very good, I'm not sure how to say that. There was a very good John McConnell trained winner of the novice hurdle. And I like to see John McConnell do well. I think he's developing into a trainer that you can kind of trust. And Grand Soir, who was ridden by Simon Torrance. Obviously then Fan de Blues won the big race. But for me, what was most interesting on the day was Ida's Boy. Noel Meads, heavily backed into odds on, real chasing type for Jigginstown. And Brian Cooper was riding, and it was a real confident kind of no-nonsense ride. But I was minded to look at Brian's last few rides, and he's been very selective, as we know, since the heyday. His last ride for Noel Meads were 1-6 the Model Kingdom we mentioned last week, 7-2 Black Hawk Eagle, who obviously disappointed. Bridgehead 5-2 favourite, just touched off. And then on Sunday, he rode two horses for him, Royal Romeo, who didn't stay but ran very well, 6-1. And 10-11. And I'm wondering now, you mentioned Sean Flanagan, who obviously doesn't have that job anymore. It looks like the Noel Mead, Brian Cooper thing is going to become a thing. And he's back riding winners for Jigginstown as well.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? It's rolling back the years here. Gigginstown, Brian Cooper, riding winner. So interesting jump season ahead, there's no doubt about it. But look, to finally wrap up, have you a horse that you saw during the week you think people should follow going forward? Emma, have you got one?
Yeah, it was actually interesting. I saw Emmett Mullins spot a 3-year-old over to Orteal. McTighe, I think is how you pronounce it. He was actually a good horse in the flat for Jim Bulger. I think he was rated 98. And he was very impressive. He won a Grade 2 hurdle over in France, and he's probably a juvenile to follow going forward. He just showed a great attitude, and he was very very game, I thought, over his hurdles, and in the finish he really stuck his neck out, which is always a good sign for the flat horses going hurdling. So yeah, he'd be the one I'd be kind of tracking from last week.
Okay, interesting one. Johnny, did you see anything you liked?
I'm trying to think here now, what will I go for? I might even give Grand Soir, actually, because the two winners of Cork, him and Mount Ida's Boy, I liked. Neither might want bottomless ground, but I think there's going to be a nice pot in the two of them going forward. If you're going to... Actually, if I'm going to put my neck in the line, Marine National for the Supreme, I think at 16s he's been sort of underestimated. He might even get 20-1. I think he's a horse that has a load of ability. I know Willie has that very good bumper horse from last year out of Quaig and so on, but I think this horse is very, very good, and I feel that's the race he's going to rock up in Cheltenham.
Yeah, I'd agree he's very good. I'd worry about which race he goes for. That's the only thing at this stage for me. I think they probably will put him out and trip at some stage, whether it's pre-Cheltenham or after Cheltenham, I don't know. But yeah, he's a very, very good horse. I wouldn't put anyone off backing that horse. And for me, I'm going to pick a more lower level one. I'm hoping the horse will win a bumper called Fairmoil of Noel Meads. It was beaten ahead at Punchestown on Wednesday in a 4-year-old race. Very unlucky in running. Was cruising on the approach to the turn into the straight, got a little bit shuffled back, took a while to get out into space and get going, only beaten ahead at the line. That's one for me. It's by Fast Company as well, so it should handle winter ground. So that's my little suggestion going forward. But anyway, thanks for watching.
Well, Vinny, it was won by a horse by Affincy, and it was last week that Emma mentioned Affincy, and I had no recollection, never heard of this horse, looked it up. See the Stars half-brother, the Soldier of Fortune, that ran twice for John Ox, and by all accounts is getting nice bumper winners now as well, so interesting going forward.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, he had a lot of point-to-point winners last year, I think, so we'll probably see a few more coming out soon.
Good stuff. One to keep an eye on as well. There you are. Loads of tips for the future. And thanks for watching. I won't be here next week. I'm hoping the guys will. We're trying to sort out a show for next week. I'm going away for a couple of weeks on holidays off to Spain for a well-deserved rest. So enjoy your week. Be safe gambling, and hopefully we'll see you all again next week. Thanks for watching, guys, and thanks for joining me.